Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. On this week's episode, I'll be speaking with convicted murderer Shey Weiker. On May 26, 2014, early in the morning, Shey started a house fire at the residence of Daniel Marker by throwing a railroad flare in the house. Shey claims that Daniel was molesting her son, and this was a means to get her own justice. The individuals killed in the fire were Danny Joe Marker Jr., 48 years old, and Tara Vance, 44 years old. The third victim, Dana Weatherall, survived by jumping out of the home's back window. She was in the hospital for a total of 4 days. All of the victims were hearing impaired, and one was partially blind. The two women were staying over at Danny's house at the time of the fire. The house became engulfed with flames, and Danny died of carbon monoxide poisoning, along with Tara. Shey was arrested later that day and charged with 4 counts of aggravated arson, 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of attempted aggravated murder, and 1 count of tampering with evidence. She admitted her guilt in setting the fire, and ended up pleading guilty to aggravated arson, aggravated murder, and murder. Shey was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Here is my interview with Shey Weiker.
Hello, this is a free call from City, an inmate at the Ohio Reformatory for Women.
Where were you born?
I was born in Findlay, Ohio.
What was your first positive memory as a child?
My first positive is being loved and with arms wrapped around me by my grandmother.
What was your first negative memory as a child?
My first negative memory is being molested at the age of 4. Yes, at the age of 4. It lasted for a year until I was 5. It was done by my mom's husband at the time. It was my younger sister's father. My mom she fought to press charges for that, and they took a attempted kidnapping charge over the molestation charge.
Did you suffer any childhood abuse or trauma?
The sexual abuse lasted from 4 years old to 5 years old. But physical abuse lasted way longer than that. My mom tried to leave, and he found us. And when he found us, it was just horrible. So.
Did she ever get away from him?
Yeah, she did get away from him. We stayed at a shelter for a little bit, and then we went to stay with my aunt, and then she eventually had gotten an apartment where we lived for a long time.
What was your behavior like growing up, starting as early as you can remember?
Well, before the molestation started, I could remember, going outside, playing in the dirt, a typical 4-year-old. But after it started, I isolated myself. I was locked in a room a lot because he threatened to kill my mom and hurt my sisters if I told anybody. So I was real isolated. He basically kept me locked in my room to play by myself. My sisters could come in every now and then, but that was it. And then, after we left, I started, getting unshy and started, going outside with friends and just I stayed close to home.
What was your behavior like in school, primarily your middle school and high school years?
Oh, well, I was out of control at middle school and high school. I ended up getting suspended from school for fighting my younger sister. And then after the suspension from one school, I went to a city school, and I ended up getting expelled from there because I got into a fight with this girl, and I ended up breaking some bones. I was real unruly. I got put on probation at the age of 14. I tried running away from home, and it was real unruly. I ended up going to live with my cousin, God rest her soul, she's passed away now. But at 14, I also got raped by my late father's best friend. And nothing was done with that either. He fled to Mexico, and they didn't really put up a chase to get him. So that made it worse. And like I said, I started running away from home. I was very unruly, arguing all the time, not doing what I was supposed to, mouthing off, smoking. That's when I started to steal my dad's weed, God rest his soul. And then when we moved into the city more instead of the country, I was stealing his deer and put holes in the walls in the apartment we were at. Just really unruly attitude, didn't want to listen to nobody, thought I was right.
Did you engage in any type of criminal activity as a juvenile?
As a juvenile, I was put on probation, but it wasn't because I was involved in any criminal activity. It was more because I was unruly and not doing what I was supposed to be doing.
At what age did you get pregnant with your son? Do you have more children than just him?
I got pregnant at the age of 18 with my son. Had him when I was still 18. And then my daughter, I had 13 months and 3 days later.
Do you remember the feeling you had when you gave birth?
My son, I gave a vaginal birth. My daughter, I had to have a C-section, and it was the happiest moment of my life. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Let's talk about the crimes you're in prison for. You're serving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years for aggravated arson, aggravated murder, and attempted murder. Your co-defendant, Charles Schaeffer, is serving a 25-year sentence for his participation in the crime. Can you walk me through the events that led up to the incident that occurred on May 26, 2014?
Well, that night, it was me, Karen Schaeffer, which is Charles's wife, and my ex, my other co-defendant, Timothy Hall, and a few other people. They were minors at the time, so I won't mention their names. All went to the VFW, one of the posts in Findlay, Ohio, for a karaoke night. And we was all there. We all was doing karaoke. And Jason had left me at the bar to leave with some other woman. And that upset me. I was upset. I had a half a beer. And after that half a beer, I went to try to jump off a bridge, and I failed the 3 times that I tried. Who was because of Timothy, my co-defendant that is now free from prison, and the 3rd time because of Jason, which was my boyfriend at the time. After that, we had drove home. I don't remember driving home at all. Still to this day, I don't remember driving home. It was all a blur. But when I pulled up to the house on Taft Boulevard, which is where I was residing at the time, I got out and there was people on the porch and they were smoking marijuana. So I said, I need to calm down. And they asked me, and we started smoking, and I explained to them, what was going on, and I started getting more upset. I got a text on my phone from Charles asking me to come in the house. He seemed that I was visibly upset, so he asked me what was wrong. What did I want to do about it? I said, well, there's nothing I can do, but still, continued to try to go to the wall, and they said it's an open investigation. And he's like, go on the back porch on the second shelf, straight ahead out the door, and there's a bag of flares. Go get them. So I went and got them, and I brought them to him, and he's like, here, take this one, take the lid off. He instructed me on how to do this, how to work the flare. I never knew how to work a flare at all. I haven't worked a flare a day in my life, not with a gun, not with my hands. He instructed me on how to work this flare, and he said, now go do this. Charles is the type of man that if you don't do what he says when he says it, he will kick you out of his house. He'll lay a guilt trip on you. He'll manipulate you to get you to do what he wants at the time he wants it done. Because if you tell him no, then it's all bad. And so I walked out the door, I looked at Timothy, and we walked off the porch, walked over the railroad tracks, and in front of the house is where I stood in front of the house with Daniel Marker, and I was arguing with Timothy. He was like, no, don't do this, don't do this. And I'm like, no, stop. It's my son. I have to do this for my son. I walked across the street, and with the flare, and I threw it. I didn't know that Daniel was home. Sorry. I didn't know Daniel was home, let alone two other people that were staying there. Nor did I know that his brother Shane, which just happens to be my daughter's father, nailed the doors and windows shut, the back door and the windows. I didn't know that he had nailed them shut prior to that. All I wanted to do was send a message to Daniel to stay away from my son, because he kept trying to get to my son. And that's all I wanted to do, was send a message to my son, for him to stay away from my son. Later, I found out that Daniel was in the home, and so was two women. And here I sit.
What followed after the fact? What was your next move after the house was engulfed in flames?
I froze. My co-defendant, Mr. Schaeffer, came running up the steps and told me to look out the back window. And I had looked out the back window to my apartment upstairs from his, and the house was totally engulfed in flames. And I froze, and I guess I went to fall because I almost fell on my son, and I was caught by Mr. Schaeffer. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I didn't know that I still at that time didn't know that anybody was in the house. And I didn't know that anybody was in the house. I didn't find out till later on that, early morning, that two people had passed away, Daniel Marco being one of them and Tara being the other. And like I froze, like my mentality went out the window, because I never wanted to hurt anybody. That was never in the agenda. I just wanted to send a message to stay away from my son.
Did you leave the scene when the house caught fire?
I left the scene and went back to my apartment. And that's when Charles, 7 minutes later, Charles come upstairs and told me to look out the back window. And that's when I looked out the back window and the house was engulfed in flames. At first, my mind was blank, and then, racing thoughts just started going through my head, like, oh my God, I can't believe it's that bad. I didn't think it would be that bad. I hope nobody was in there. Like, all these thoughts just started racing through my mind.
How much time had passed from setting the fire to you getting arrested that day?
It was basically the same day, just later on. I think the police pulled up probably about 8 o'clock that morning and had us all sitting in cuffs. I was sitting outside the police cars. Everybody else was sitting inside the police cars. I was the only one, well, me and Karen were the only ones sitting outside. Sitting outside the police cars, me because of my son and Karen because she literally wasn't capable of getting in the back of the police car.
What was your first night in jail like?
Horrible. It was horrible. The first night in the city, well, county jail, I cried. I cried myself to sleep. I had a major headache from crying earlier that day, and the thoughts in my head was, I can't believe 2 people are dead. I have to live with this for the rest of my life. My kids are going to be motherless until they're grown, way past grown. I just kept saying I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't mean it.
Was the death penalty on the table at any point in time in your or Charles' cases?
It was for me at first. It's like the papers kept returning death penalty, death penalty. My kids seen that and they were scared.
On September 15th, 2014, you're sentenced to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. How did you feel when you were handing down your sentence?
I bawled. I bawled because I knew that I wouldn't see my daughter until she was grown. I wouldn't be able to see my family every day like I want to see. I wouldn't be there to protect my kids like I needed to be. I was a mess. I tried to call Mr. Henry, which happened to be my public defender at the time, and his secretary ended up calling the county jail and told them to tell me to quit calling because he was on vacation. I wanted to try to get an appeal in, and so far I've been unsuccessful.
Are you involved in your son's life currently?
I am as much as I can be. My daughter and my son both have little girls. My daughter I talk to just about every day, and I talk to my granddaughter just about every day. Well, my daughter's daughter. My son, he don't want to talk to me. He's very angry, and I don't know why. And I've never spoken to Lillian, which is my son's daughter.
You've been incarcerated going on 7 years now. What does an average day consist of for you?
It's actually been 7 years. A day in the life in my shoes is prison is wake up at 5:30 in the morning, get my coffee, pray, try to get in the microwave to get something to eat for the day, take my shower, get dressed, do dishes, get my mail if I have any, go outside, spend time with my friends. I try not to think about my sentence too much because if I think about my sentence, it drags me down. Do I think about the lives lost? Absolutely, every day. I have to live with that every day of my life. That don't go away. I sometimes have nightmares. Or that night, it haunts me sometimes. I do my job and I go to sleep. That's it. Start all over the next day.
Have you taken any type of rehabilitation classes or furthered your education since being incarcerated?
They won't let me further my education because they say I have too much time. But I have taken anger management. I've taken domestic violence. I've taken some Bible studies. I've taken self-esteem classes. I've also facilitated them. Kind of have to rehabilitate yourself in here. You got to get yourself up and get yourself motivated to be able to help yourself. Otherwise, you won't get no help.
Before we conclude this interview, is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
I wanted to get my side of the story out there. I want people to know that, and kids to know if your kid comes to you and tells you that they've been touched, you need to do investigations because the justice system isn't always going to be there. They're not always going to do the right thing. My son got swept under the rug for 6 years. I need help getting home to my kids, to my grandkids, to my mother. I got family out there that needs me, and I'm not the only one that was dealt a life sentence. My son got 2 life sentences. One beginning at the age of 6 years old. The other when he was 12. It's not fair to him or any other child that feels like they don't have a voice because something happened and nobody will listen. I need help to help them. I need help to be able to go home and start the center that I want to start for the kids that have no voice. I'm going to go home and I'm going to start this center. And I'm going to be successful at it, and I'm going to give those kids a voice. I just need help getting home.
That was my interview with Shey Weiker. Thank you for listening.